Hello, everyone, and welcome to Passion Week. We apologize for being, I guess, a day late at this point, but we have begun Passion Week, which started on Sunday, yesterday, with Passion Sunday. Um, in the Old Rite, which some of you are familiar with, some of you maybe not so much, but in the Old Rite, the Gospel yesterday uh, gives us a great understanding of what's going on here. Basically, Jesus had proclaimed himself to be God in this gospel to the Jewish leaders, who, of course, took great offense to that. And upon this proclamation that Jesus made of himself that he was God, first thing they did is they said, not only do we disagree with you, not only do we think you're a bad guy, but we think you have a devil. You have a devil. And at that point, they picked up stones to stone him and to kill him. And of course, Jesus, knowing that this was not the way he was to die, in order to fulfill the Old Testament scriptures, the gospel actually says that Jesus hid himself and left the temple. Now, think about that. He's got an entire group of Jewish leaders around him that were prepared at that moment to kill him, and he hid himself and left the temple. So obviously, as St. Augustine has confirmed, something miraculous happened here. Okay, so Jesus hid himself. And in many churches, be it a traditional parish or a Novus Ordo parish that many of you are part of, this beginning on Passion Sunday, we veil the crucifix and we veil any sacred images in our churches. We can also do this in our home. And the reason being is that Christ has hidden himself. And Christ remains hidden until Palm Sunday, until his glorious entry into Jerusalem. So this kind of hits home even more for us during this Lenten season, because many of us, and I guess maybe all of us in the U.S., do not have access to the sacraments. We have no public masses, therefore no Eucharist. Most of us do not have access to confession, or even in many cases, and quite unfortunately, to extreme unction or the sacrament of the sick. And that is extremely unfortunate for those who are dying from this illness. And sacraments being our primary source of grace, and we being having those absent from our lives, having Christ essentially hidden from us in this way during this time, we really need to ramp up our prayer life, because prayer at this point would be our primary source of grace, which we so desperately need. Because a life devoid of grace is a life that opens up to the influences of Satan. So I wanted to read you something else that really kind of solidifies all this, except it is closed at the moment. Sorry about that. All right, this is an email that came from the Augustine Institute. Many of you have maybe have seen it, but it's certainly worth hearing again. And I'll just read it to you. What does our global quarantine mean? The word quarantine comes from the Italian quarantina, which simply means 40 days. It is also the same word for Lent in Italian. The word finds its first usage in Venice in the 14th century for ships that came in from countries that were suffering with plague. The ships would be quarantined for 40 days to ensure that they did not spread illness. It is ironic that during our season of Lent, we find ourselves in quarantine from this virus. No sports, social gatherings, concerts, or conferences, just to name a few of the cancellations. But in fact, this sombering silence of social gathering was actually the norm during the classical Catholic Lent until just 200 years ago. Now we have an opportunity, albeit not of our choosing, to live a more radical Lent. Not only us Catholics, but it seems that the whole world has been invited to live a more austere Lent. What is the meaning of this? Is there a prophetic sign that we should discern? Does heaven want the world to practice a more perfect Lenten observance, so to speak? If so, the purpose behind such a more serious Lenten observance would be found in the meaning of Lent itself. And it goes on, of course, in more detail. But again, the point of this is embrace this Lent that we are all observing now, Catholic or not Catholic. Take this opportunity to grow in your prayer life. Again, we need a beefed up prayer life. And the most basic thing, and probably the biggest prayer we can pray, of course, is the Rosary. But beyond that, there's Liturgy of the Hours. There are any multitude of prayer observances and practices that we can get into, and we so desperately need those things right now. And of course, pray for the end of this virus. Pray for those medical professionals who are out there working tirelessly to help the people that have contracted this, and of course pray for the souls of those who have died and their families.
Hello to you all. Everything that Robert says is just something to really actually kind of take to prayer. Sit and visit with the Lord about this. Just to kind of give you a suggestion as far as maybe enhancing your prayer life. I hope that you are all home as a family and getting to spend time together. And what a beautiful way to grow in your marriages and in your families is to grow in prayer together. So, consider maybe a regimen, a schedule of prayer, morning prayer, first thing in the morning, the Angelus at noon, Divine Mercy Chaplet at 3 o'clock, the Family Rosary in the evening, Angelus at 6 p.m., and then evening prayer before bedtime. Just put it on a whiteboard somewhere, put it on in your phones and schedule it, and really, really beef up your prayer, because as Robert was explaining, this is our means of grace in the largest way. Is prayer right now, since Jesus is hidden from us in our churches and have no sacraments, no Eucharist, no confession, no extreme unction, no, I know in our diocese all marriages, confirmations, all of it is canceled. I mean, here we are coming up to Easter, when many people come into the church during the Easter Vigil. There's most likely not going to be one this year. So, lots of prayer. For this week, we wanted to, I wanted to share with you I received an email, and hopefully the gentleman who sent that email is watching this video and will have his answer, but I will email him and respond, asking who actually wrote the document of the duties of father and husband that was a summary of Saint Eymard. And to be honest, I can't answer that. I will send the link from where we first received it. There's a website called Regina Prophetorum that has homilies of two really good priests. And this was from one of the homilies. And in the homily link, he gave the document PDFs. And so that's where we received the summaries of St. Eymard's teachings. Philip, I think that's right. So we're going to send you the link to the particular homily where these documents were listed, because it too is so important for right now where we are in Lent and in the state of the world. This homily, it calls for penance, penance, penance. And this priest lays out this teaching that says, if we at the level of our duties of our state in life in the family are not doing those duties as we should be, as the Lord calls us to, then it goes up this chain of command where there's us as laity that are called to do our duties, and our priests that are called to do their duties, and our bishops that are called to do their duties, all the way up to the Holy Father that is called to do his duties. And when those duties aren't done, this priest in this homily explains that, and he gives accurate source of where this comes from. When we're not doing our part, the supernatural will not do their part. The angels are not, they're not given orders to come in and create these miracles and do these miracles for us until we're doing our part. So to understand what the Lord calls us to as husbands and wives, mothers and fathers, is so crucial, because we can't do what we don't know we're supposed to be doing. And this teaching is so perfect for understanding what we're called to as husbands and fathers. And then now this week, it's wives as mothers. And just like last week, the document from St. Eymard and the conference from Father Ripperger on the virtuous wife, the bar's high. The bar is very high. It's very countercultural. It's very old-fashioned. It's very traditional. But what part of that makes it no longer effective? And now that we're home and we have time to be together, and we have time to really pray and to think about, what am I called to as a wife and a mom? What does it really mean to be a wife and a mother? How has God established this? What are the duties of wife and mother? That's what we're giving you this week. And it's going to be tough because it is very countercultural. And ladies, I challenge you to really take in what you're hearing and what you're reading, because consider how it affects you. If it rubs you wrong, if it irritates you a little bit, if you say this is baloney, I don't believe this, then stop and ask yourself why. Why do I not believe this? Why does this irritate me? Why does this rub me wrong? And actually maybe even sit in prayer for a little bit and ask the Lord, why does this rub me wrong? Lord, is this what you're asking of me? And just like we asked the husbands last week, pick 2 or 3 things from the conference and from the document that you know you need to work on, that you believe that the Lord is calling you to work on, to improve yourself as a wife and a mother for the glory of God and for the salvation of your family, first and foremost. So ask the Lord what it is that he wants you to do with this information that you're given.
All right, and husbands, in order to support your spouse in this, I guess my first suggestion would be to pray for her. And obviously, we need to be praying for our spouses every day, multiple times a day when we think about her. But pray in particular, in this instance, that the Holy Spirit will lead her and guide her to discern from these teachings what God would want her to gain from it. And then, you might ask your wife or suggest to her that you'd be willing to sit down and discuss how you might be able to help her and support her in growing in the areas that she has discerned that she would like to grow in, and that God wants her to grow in. And then finally, remember, as husbands, as fathers, we are given God has given us the responsibility to be the leader, to be their spiritual leader, to be their spiritual protection, to be their physical protector. And this is a responsibility that we have. So, being that it is a responsibility, we are also held accountable for this. So, keep that in mind as you have these discussions. We're the frontline protection for our family, frontline protector of our spouse. So take that on again. Like Diane said for the wives, and like I said for the husbands last week, the bar is set very high, but it's set very high for good reason. We have precious gifts, precious treasures that we've been given and are called to protect and take care of. So, with that said, we wish you a blessed and prosperous Passion Week, and we'll see you again on Palm Sunday.
We're praying for you, and we ask for your prayers as well. Benedicite.
All right. God bless.